because you can't even make it up, right?
Yeah, they can't write things like that.
Nope, man.
Oh, yeah, but as long as we make our principles clear.
Hey, we're ready. The camera's on.
Okay.
Welcome to the June 21st business meeting of the Clackamas County Commission. And I'll turn this over to the administrator to take the roll.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning. We have Mr. Stephen Madcore here, County Council, and Mary Rathke serving as your clerk to the board. I'll start the row with Commissioner Humberston.
Here.
Commissioner Fisher.
Here?
Commissioner Reynolds.
Here.
Commissioner Schrader.
Here?
Commissioner Savas.
Good job.
Here.
And Chair Bernard.
Here, and I don't hear a mic, but I don't know if it's working or not. Do you guys hear the mic out there?
I heard Dawn's.
Yeah.
It's just yours, I think.
Mine's on.
I've always been curious when I'm not here, when Mrs. is absent, who acknowledges we're not.
Testing, 1, 2. Test, test.
No, when one of us is absent, who acknowledges we're not here?
All right, with that, would you please join me for a Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, first up, we're going to provide a statement, and Commissioner Fisher is going to read that statement into the record.
I want to thank my colleagues. I shared a story at policy session on Tuesday about being down in California taking care of my grandchildren. And while I had the honor and privilege of reading stories to my little 3-year-old Augie, who actually read to me Green Eggs and Ham, and then I read to him, Are You My Mother? And right before I was tucking him in, he says, I want to see my mama. And I looked down. Now, granted, at the time, I was taking care of my grandchildren because it was quite a chaotic scene at their house. They actually turned their house into a movie set, of which my daughter was on the set at the time. But instead of explaining that to little Augie, I just said, of course. And I got up, I left the room, I went to the movie set, the movie filming, and I whispered to her, I said, Augie wants to see you. And she stopped everything. She went in the room and she tucked him in. Just, miles away at the border, there's a different story happening where children didn't have the ability to have their parents because they were being separated from parents due to our federal policy on immigration. And I was really overwhelmed with those two competing issues, and I really didn't know what we could do, and I was really struggling with that, and I brought that to my commissioners who shared my concern. And one thing, we are one commission here. Helen Keller had a quote once that I like to repeat. It says, I am one, still I am one. I cannot do everything, but I can do something. I will not refuse to do the something that I can do. So we worked with our equity, diversity, inclusion with Emmett Wheatfield, who's here. And we have a statement that we would like to read into the record. We, the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Council of Clackamas County Administration, and Clackamas County Board of Commissioners stand in solidarity with the international community to denounce the inhumane and un-American treatment of immigrants and asylum seekers who seek refuge, freedom, and fundamental human rights in the United States. We further denounce the immoral and unjust treatment of children and families through forced separation and incarceration. We believe families matter. In light of his executive order reversing the forced separation of children from their parents, we call upon President Donald J. Trump and his administration to cease and desist from the unconscionable treatment of children as criminals and immediately reunify affected families. We believe all men, women, and children are created equal and deserve dignity.
Thank you. Paul.
Yeah, we had a really interesting conversation at Commissioner Fisher referred to, and I've been struggling amongst all the reading I've been doing on all the transportation committees is to find this week and Monday as well, to find the time to actually explore deeper into this one thing that had come up, and I think I mentioned on Tuesday, you know, reading stories back during the war about parents having to put their kids on the ships to head to the U.S. for their safety, but the parents staying home. And I thought, I wonder how that's happening today. And I kind of referenced that. So I found an article late last night when I was taking a break. And I'm just going to read one. This is something that was published June 1st of this year by PBSO NewsHour. And it's several pages. I'm just going to read one paragraph just to give people an idea of the problem or challenge that we're facing. The U.S. has seen now this is about unaccompanied children, and this is really what it falls into. There's a name. So if a child is separated or is moved to the border and their parents, you know, are not accompanied with them, they just show up at the border just as children. That's called unaccompanied. So this is what this article is about, unaccompanied children arriving at the border. What happens? So in part of this, the paragraph goes as such. The U.S. has seen some surges of children at the border in recent years, most notably in 2014, when the government apprehended 47,000 unaccompanied minors in the first 5 months of the year. That's a huge number. The government has not said how many children have been filtered through this system since the Trump administration's recent zero-tolerance policy, but overall, Health Human Services said this week that 10,773 migrant children were under the agency's care. And if you think about 47,000 in just the first 5 months of 2014 and multiply that, that's about over 100,000 per year that show up at the border. Watching some of the news articles on TV, further talking about the cost, and the cost of trying to care for a child per day ranges from a couple $100 up to, I think, $775 on the information I did find per day. And just think about that. And then think about, I also trying to contrast that to the people in our country, in our state, in our county, in our local cities that are sleeping in a car because they don't have a home. I mean, there's a balance we have to strike. And it's certainly something that really tugs on the heartstrings of all of us, but from a practical matter, how we cope with it here at home and how we cope with it at the border when these children show up without parents. And just think about the task of trying to reunite them with their parents when we don't even know where they come from and who they are. It's a very sad situation. So very complicated as well, but just wanted to share that little tidbit.
Martha.
Yeah, I just want to make a comment. I want to thank Commissioner Fisher and our Diversity Council for moving forward with this. Many of you know my mother's family was Italian, and my grandmother was first-generation Italian here. However, her mother was an immigrant, and one of my grandmother's early memories was that when her father died as a small child, they placed my Aunt Michelina and my grandmother Principia in a New York City orphanage. And what my grandmother told me was that she remembers how ashamed she was because they shaved her head bald because of lice issues, and how ashamed she was to be at the table. And I think that trauma of separation from her mother finally did remarry, was able to get them out of the orphanage. But I think that trauma stayed with her entire life. And I think that's the thing that we really need to worry about most, that this is kind of trauma that can actually mold somebody's lifelong experiences. And I think we're going to have to be prepared for that. And I'm also very worried that I don't even know what the process is going to be, either at the state level or the federal level, how we're going to find who goes to who. Because these kids evidently have been moved all over the United States. And my understanding, we don't have some of the younger kids here, but there are teenagers that have been separated in Oregon from their parents. And yeah, this is not who we are as a country. It's true that immigration is a huge issue that we're going to have to grapple with, but this is not the humane way to do it. And just thank you for pulling this together for us, Commissioner. I appreciate it.
Well, I just want to add that, there's a difference between unaccompanied children and a removal of children from their parents. You won't see a 6-month-old crawling over the border. Somebody was telling me, I was listening to radio this morning, and somebody was visiting these sites, and there was a 1-year-old and a 6-month-old, and one other about the same age as a 1-year-old, and they were both wearing the same shirt. And so the concern was when he walked through the first time, he recognized the one kid. The second time, he wasn't sure what the one kid's name was because they were wearing the exact same shirt. So are they going to get mixed up? I think there's a huge challenge, and I think that I think back to, I wasn't here when the Japanese were interned, but my father was, and in Milwaukee, they own, it used to be called the Celery Gardens. Les, you probably remember that. And a lot of the Japanese owned that land. And when they left, a lot of people tried to take that land. And there's a lot of citizens in Milwaukee didn't let that happen. And I was very proud of the fact that my father and grandfather fought to make sure that when they came home, they got their land back. And that's also true now. Immigrants who are not legally here but have lived here a long time are arrested and sent back to Mexico. What happens to their land? What happens to their house and their bank accounts and all that other stuff? It is a huge problem, and a problem that is not going to be easily resolved. But I think it's imperative that we as county commissioners and as citizens have a moral obligation to address this issue. If we don't, it wasn't so different in Nazi Germany, and it wasn't so different when Roosevelt signed that order and the Japanese were taken from their home by the FBI, I believe, and put into internment camps. And I personally knew people who were interned down in southern Oregon or northern California, Tule Lake, I think it was called. Tule Lake. Yeah. Anyway, Ken.
I think most of us can understand the emotional trauma that occurs when children are separated from their parents. And I think that's been spoken to pretty eloquently already. But I just want to point out some of the legal aspects of things since my career was in law enforcement. I lived less than a mile from the Mexican border for 25 years. The fear-mongering that I have seen in this country in the last year and a half regarding people coming across the border, to me, is disgusting. And it's appealing to the worst nature of people to fear-monger like this. To lock up people for committing a misdemeanor is not something that we normally do in the law enforcement community. We issue a ticket and expect you to show up in court, most of whom do. Crossing the border is nothing more than a misdemeanor. Being in the country without permission is not even a misdemeanor, it is a civil offense. To lock people up for a civil offense is not something that we do in the law enforcement community. We also do not prevent people from seeing their attorneys, as is being done on the border right now. And yet the Supreme Court has ruled repeatedly that any person in the United States of America is entitled to the full due process of law. And it has nothing to do with their status as citizens or not. They are entitled to the full due process under the law. And finally, I would point out that both in American law and in international law, in treaties that we actually wrote ourselves and got others to sign, to seek asylum is not a crime. You come to the border, you declare that you are seeking asylum, you report to the closest federal authorities to make that claim, and then you are entitled to a hearing before the court as to whether or not your claim for asylum is legitimate. even that process is being abrogated. We used to be the nation who was the beacon of human rights. And yesterday or day before, we withdrew from the Human Rights Council. What has happened to us? That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Well, yes. So with that, we'll announce that the board will adjourn as the county commission and convene as the housing authority for this next item. And with us today is Housing Authority Commissioner Paul Reynolds. Thank you for putting in your volunteer time. And Housing Authority consent agenda. You're going to ask the clerk to read the consent agenda?
Okay, the Housing Authority consent agenda. In the matter of writing off uncollectible accounts for the fourth quarter of fiscal year 2018, and a resolution 1931 approving the Housing Authority of Clackamas County's fiscal year 2018-2019 budget. That concludes today's Housing Authority consent agenda.
Does any commissioner want to remove any item from the consent agenda? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
I move we approve the Housing Authority consent agenda.
Second?
Been moved and seconded that we approve the Housing Authority consent agenda. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you very much for volunteering your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now I'll announce that will adjourn as the Housing Authority Board and reconvene as the Board of County Commissioners for the remainder of the meeting. And up next is Don.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. We do have a presentation. This regards the city of Damascus, or the former city of Damascus, the excess fund disbursements that were required pursuant to the state law that facilitated the disincorporation of the city. We have Mr. David Bodway from our Finance Department and Mr. Todd Logan from our Public Affairs Department here to present this item to you. I also note that we have in the audience County Assessor Tammy Little is here as well. So.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you. I just want to make sure the microphone's on. Good morning, Chair Bernard, Commissioners. I'm here today, as Don explained, to talk about the Damascus excess monies distribution. As you guys are aware, the residents of the former city voted to disincorporate on May 17th of 2016, with formal disincorporation occurring on July 18th of 2016. And on that date, the total funds transferred to Clackamas County equaled almost $8.4 million. And according to Oregon law, this money was supposed to be split up among, like I want to call, three pots. $3 million of that was placed in a special county account and used to pay certain obligations. A little over $2.8 million was designated for exclusive use on roads with the former city. And a little over $2.5 million was set aside to distribute back to taxpayers who met certain criteria as outlined in the law. And now that all financial obligations have been realized and satisfied, and in accordance with Oregon law, unspent money will be distributed back to property taxpayers, and this is based on previous property taxes paid. And preliminary figures show that the dollars that are going to be distributed back to the taxpayers will equal a little over $3.7.5 million. And out of this figure is comprised of the original $2.5 million that was set aside when the money was transferred over. The county earned interest on that money of a little over $94,000 that's going to be added to that pot. They had some miscellaneous credits of a little over $62,000. And the county actually, we were really diligent and efficient the way we spent that money, and we only need to spend less than 2/3 of that $3 million. So the taxpayers are going to see almost additional $1 million from that pot of money. And after this meeting today, I'm going to be working with PGA on kind of a communication plan. We're going to be updating the web content, issuing a press release, targeting Facebook posts, Nextdoor posts. And we anticipate on or around July 23rd 2018, these checks will start going out in the mail. And with that, before I open it up for questions, I just want to thank all the county departments. This was a team effort. It's not every day that you are tasked with taking on the responsibility of wrapping up a disincorporated city, but this was a team effort, and I feel we all did a great job.
So I have I was going to ask you the question, but I won't because you already answered it this morning. I had heard rumors that people were going to have to come to the county and pick up the check because they needed to sign a form. Our outside auditor has determined that that's not necessary. Otherwise, I was going to suggest a special parking spot for people. But you know, it's rare, I would say, to get money back, and
To say the least.
yeah, to say the least. I haven't seen a kicker check in many years. But I think I'm really proud of the effort the county has made in you know, being diligent with the spending of that money. And I don't want people to wait for Christmas, but Merry Christmas. And so thank you for your hard work, and you, Tammy, for yours. Do I get to sign the checks?
If you want to sign all 4,300.
I want to know if we can move to Damascus.
Well, the truth is you have to have paid the tax
I know.
and own property in Damascus. But I'll pay you a cent on the dollar if you'll give me your check. All right, with that, any other questions or comments? All right, well, thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you very much.
And we have a gentleman here, Chris Hayes, who was a representative of the Citizens Committee for the Disincorporated Clackamas County, who'd like to speak on this matter. Thank you, Chris.
Good morning, Chair Bernard and Commissioners. Chris Hawes, I appear before you today, hopefully for the last time ever in my capacity as the campaign manager, communications coordinator, chief cook, and bottle washer for the Citizens Committee at Disincorporation. Almost 6 years ago, one of our citizens came together and asked us to disincorporate a city. We laughed at him at first and then realized he was right. Damascus was a bad idea, badly implemented, badly executed. It was just a bad idea, and it was time for it to end. Today is kind of the final chapter, and I could tell you that had I known it would turn out like this and I could have gotten anyone to take the bet, I could have won a lot of money on this one, because there's a really good betting line in Damascus that this would never happen. I have two former city councilors who have made a minor second career out of betting that somehow you guys would figure out how to keep the money. I've told them that we pledged that this would happen, and we wrote the legislation together with the county and the state legislatures. Bill Kennemer and Shamia Fagan worked together to give our community an option to get out, and we did. And with what you and your staff have done today, and I am absolutely impressed that given $3 million to spend, less than 2/3 of it was spent. It's a testament to the efficient and diligent use of the funds and the work that your staff put into it, and we appreciate it. So you have released a community from its basically final act, and we will get this money back, and Damascus will be nothing but a warm memory. So you have, at least in that area of the county right now, given current events, you have at least one community happy with you. So right now you're batting about 500. I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Next up, Les Poole and Linda Blue. Yeah, come up here. Give your name and generally where you live. Les?
Usually I say I'm from Clackamas County. I live in Gladstone. My name is Les Poole, as many of you probably know. I own property in Damascus and bare land, so probably when all is said and done, I'll get that $200, and the next day I won't remember what I did with it. I'm glad that that's ended, and all through that process, I kept saying something, and that was clear to the county, and that is you're inheriting a mess. The problems haven't gone away. Certainly, Happy Valley is annexing and doing some things that are taking over some of that property, but you really got a roads problem out there, and I was so pleased to hear that $2.8 million of this money was designated for roads in Damascus. Good job on that. I'm not sure who was responsible. We had comments about the budget that I estimated to be at least $1 billion, and it was $1.1 billion. And we heard comments about the successes of the budget, and the only issue that we didn't hear about was roads and transportation. Didn't hear anything about it, and I know I keep bringing it up. I will keep bringing it up. I want to thank the folks that have been liking and following our Facebook page, Vehicle Transportation Alliance. We're trying to get the word out that the way they're doing tolling is going to be a disaster, and that the transportation problem is crippling our economy and polluting our air. So with everything else going on, here I am again. I'd also like to thank the county for the possibility of having evening meetings once a quarter. Certainly once a month can be found at the last minute in the budget. I'd certainly look for at least one of the commissioners to entertain a conversation about that. I think that the citizens' ability to show up, and especially when you've got presentations and things where you've got either a big hearing or you've got opportunities to bring the young folks here, the school kids here. They need to be exposed to this so they're not as scared as I was the first time I walked up. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Ken?
Yeah, I asked staff for a little bit of information on the subject of road paving from your conversation last week. So I just thought this would be of interest to you. Now, this is just for in-house paving, contract paving, chip seal, and slurry seal. In 2012, the county spent $3.6 million. 2013, $3.1 million. 2014, $2 million. 2015, $4.9 million. 2016, $4.8 million. 2017, $2 million. Projected for 2018 is $8.1 million, and 2019 is $6 million projected. Now that is just for road surfacing. Just so that everybody is aware, that does not include things such as drainage, striping, shouldering, bridge work, barriers, et cetera, which actually many of those things are more expensive than the paving. And then finally, what we expect to receive from the state government as a result of the transportation bill this year is about $3 million. It will accelerate to about $13 million within 10 years. But we will still be finding ourselves with a shortfall, even at $13 million, of at least $4 million. And we're about $350 million behind at the moment. We are working on how we're going to fix that and catch up, but I just thought that you would appreciate what has been done. So,
real quickly, I thank you for that. I was actually going to submit those very questions. I try not to bother the staff too much, but you know, I was going to submit those exact questions. And to be clear, last week I spoke about tolling, and that's the biggest issue. And of course, tolling and building new infrastructure and taking care of I-205 is a completely different issue than just trying to take care of what we have. So when I'm up here speaking, or when the issue comes up, hopefully the folks are aware. So thank you again.
Well, thank you. Linda, and you live behind LaSalle High School, right?
I do, yes.
Okay, yeah, I thought so.
So I'm Linda Blue. I live in Milwaukee, and I'm on the Milwaukee Parks and Rec Board. I'm also on the Climate Action Committee. And I just wanted to say I really appreciate what you had to say about the children. My day job is working in children's mental health, and for 30 years, and since the unaccompanied minors came in 2014, we were tasked with educating and providing mental health services to them. And then 2 years ago, when the school year started, Homeland Security asked us to not provide that service anymore. So the unaccompanied minors that are here on Mount Scott are not getting an education or mental health services. So it's total blackout. So I don't know what's happening. I'm just saying it's not good. Anyway, that's not what I'm here to talk about. I appreciate you guys making that statement. I am here because I'm also a member of 350 Clackamas County, and you know, living in Milwaukee and seeing how developers have come in, and it's easier for them to pay the fee for cutting down trees than it is to follow any of what we have for expectation from developers. And watching the Portland spread of developers coming and just buying up land, particularly like in the Oak Grove area, and how all the tracts of land are being bought by developers to get rid of all the green spaces. And you know, green spaces provide such service to us, you know, the clean air, water runoff, places for habitat, and to see some of these places be bought up and carved up into houses is, I think, unconscionable. And I don't know how to stop it. I just wanted to say that I feel like it's something we really need to work on.
All right, thank you. Paul.
That's a great subject. I appreciate you bringing that one forth. And actually, we touched on that Monday evening with, not deliberately, but with some neighborhood leaders group, which represents the unincorporated areas of the county. And this is something I've been really talking about in really our systems and our planning. We're actually kind of conflicted in the sense that we aspire to all these goals, but some of these goals, what's in the way of them accomplishing them, let's just say density and trying to accommodate the housing, are frankly all those things that we love, which are, you know, our streams and our trees and so forth. And I live in Oak Grove. Been having many friends in Milwaukee as well, and talked to many folks. And that's the very, very thing that I hear so many people moving away from Portland into our area, hoping that we can maintain what we have to protect our community and our frankly, our tree canopy in the area, which is really abundant. But yet, the developers and development and people taking a half-acre lot or a quarter-acre lot and knocking down the home or expanding on it, there's trees there, and the trees go away. And discussion came up about the tree ordinance. Maybe the tree ordinance should be enforced. Well, I think the tree ordinance, unfortunately, isn't designed actually to do that, because it allows the developer to within his rights to makes the maximum use of that property. So in reality, the problem isn't the tree ordinance, having one or not having one. I think the problem is our land use goals, and shall we or shall we not protect the community, our neighborhoods. And in Oak Grove, in this MAP process, we adopted many guiding principles. One of the guiding principles, I don't have it in front of me, but basically it says, basically to maintain our current densities in the community and basically establish neighborhood overlay zones and protect those neighborhoods and communities, because there's also historic homes. The fabric of the community is the people and the people that live there. And those development pressures push people out and destroy not only the community and the fabric, but also the trees, the amenities, the homes, the history, and everything that goes with it. And we're experiencing that in a big way in our community. So thank you for bringing that forth. It's a conundrum in which we need to be able to solve.
Yeah, I remember once in Milwaukee there was a development, and it was cheaper to cut down the tree. And so we fined the guy a pretty hefty fine. It was in the right-of-way, by the way. But it didn't matter. He just put it on the price of the home.
Right.
And, you know, Paul, I was actually a little surprised. I of course, know that trees are very important to people. But when people talk about neighborhood livability, you don't often hear it's the trees. And you know, for me, that was a bit of a surprise to hear that specifically identified, because we looked at a tree ordinance in Clackamas County that would be specific to Oak Grove Jennings Lodge to preserve the tree canopy, and we got a lot of pushback, The hardest part was communicating that it was only for Oak Grove Jennings Lodge. And because the message that was received was different, that it applied countywide. And so, as when I was mayor of Milwaukee, we would actually, there was one tree that was supposed to be cut down for a roadway, and we ended up using it, leaving the tree and using it to slow traffic down. So we built a sidewalk around it. But some of the ADA issues that we are now working to
Repair?
Accommodate.
to repair or fix may have an impact on that tree, for example. So yeah, it's an issue of great concern. But I also I noticed that the 350 group is very interested in cross-laminated timber, which I'm sure you'll hear a lot more about. We have, I don't know, one commissioner who, I think,
That's what I've heard, yeah.
well, he says it all the time. All of us have some interest, and matter of fact, one of our first new buildings that will be built over here for OSU Extension will be a cross-laminated timber building.
Fantastic.
So we're excited to see that happen. I haven't actually seen one yet. You have. And I'm interested in seeing it. We also have a potential opportunity for a manufacturer to move to Clackamas County that would be pretty exciting too, because we have on some of our rural areas a need for jobs. We also own about 3,000 acres, and we're adding to that of our own forests, which we go way beyond the standard requirements that state of Oregon has in protecting the streams and rivers. And I've had an opportunity to visit some of those sites, and so we hear you.
Thanks.
Martha.
Yeah, I just want to say, part of the dilemma is this is a large urban unincorporated area, and as Commissioner Bernard pointed out, anything we would do as a tree ordinance would impact the entire county. However, tree ordinances are very effective at the municipal level. I live in Lake Oswego. They're currently digging up my road, and we have tree protection barriers up and down the road because they have a pretty viable well-followed tree ordinance. So one of the things, dare I say this is somewhat heresy here, that actually incorporating those areas you would have your own municipality to actually start enacting some of those safeguards that you want to have. So that's one more reason I always say, you might want to consider that. Been talking about it for years, but there you go. And also, I do see in the back we have two of our folks in the North Clackamas Park and Recreation District, the director and the director of our community and development groups. And there is a huge presence of that area for open space and park development through the Parks District. So get involved with them as well.
Yeah, as the Park and Rec Board helped develop the tree ordinance and the tree committee for Milwaukee. Mm-hmm. But, it took us 2 years.
Oh, yeah, it's not an easy task.
And we can only do it on public lands at this point, and we haven't, so it's taken a long time. And I think by the time those ordinances are in place and enforceable, many of those green spaces will be gone.
Could be gone. Yeah, there's going to be some loss.
Yeah, but times have changed. When I was mayor, it's the first thing we took off the table because the people were gathering outside to protest any consideration. That and dogs. I mean, trees, dogs, and children were definitely a priority when I was mayor. But the times have changed, and Milwaukee is more vocal and more supportive of those changes. Paul.
I just want to add that you know, it's not just being incorporated, it's really having the policies and the zoning to protect that. And Lake Oswego, of course, is not rezoning their properties to allow a lot more things to happen, or a lot more higher densities in their existing neighborhoods. They are in other areas, of course, where it makes sense. I think that's really the key. And talking to a number of neighborhood associations in Portland that have been battling this, they've been making their appeal to the City Council of Portland, because some of their zoning allows for homes really to be, properties to be densified intensely, and people are just buying them, and that's exactly what they're doing. So of course the trees go, the whole environment goes, and also the people go as well, which is the displacement aspect. So low-income folks, minority groups as well, are being heavily impacted in a very negative way. My goal at the county was to try to redirect some of those development pressures to areas where there is no homes, there isn't really much in the way of trees, and that's been really the Sunrise Corridor, direct it where new growth can happen. It can happen in a very designed, efficient, functional way to satisfy all that and take some of our housing pressures off, build jobs, so on and so forth. So there's a way to do it in Clackamas County, and it's really about a matter of focusing in the right direction.
And then at the same time, there's a balance between protecting farmland, our food basket, which I think marijuana has actually had a negative impact on our food basket. I was just reading something from somebody today where there's this, it's condoizing farmland where they can divide the property up. I forget how many buildings there were, 50, or was it that many?
For marijuana, not food, by the way.
For marijuana. 50 buildings on one piece of land with different addresses to grow marijuana because we limit the size. So they've found a way around it. And we don't have the ability to say no. So we have problems, but we're working on it. All right, well, thank you very much. Thank you both.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is a public hearing. Don?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a public hearing to consider a proposed Section 108 loan pool application to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. We have Mr. Kevin Coe from our Housing and Community Development Division of our Health, Housing, and Human Services Department here to present this to you.
Good morning, Chair Bernard, Commissioners. We're asking that the Commission hold a public hearing to close the public comment period for the Section 108 application to HUD. We brought the Section 108 idea to the Commission, I believe, in February to explore some of the options that the Section 108 funds can be used for, explore some of the policies and procedures that we would have in place to help us administer the Section 108 program. In your packet is the draft application that we hope to send to HUD by the end of this fiscal year, June 30th. And we've incorporated some of the suggestions and discussions that we've had at our meetings. So at this point, I just want to make it clear to the board that we are removing the Arbor Terrace project from the application. Originally, Arbor Terrace is a housing authority project, and we're going to use some of the Section 108 funds to rehabilitate the Arbor Terrace apartments. We've decided that the Arbor Terrace can't support enough of a debt service to make it feasible to use Section 108, so we're looking at other funding sources, such as CDBG, to do some of the Arbor Terrace renovation and preserving the Section 108 funds for generally larger projects, because there is quite a bit of administration that goes along with these funds. So we are pulling the Arbor Terrace project from the Section 108 application, meaning we're going to ask HUD to approve a loan pool for approximately $11,000. And then as individual projects come to, $11 million, I'm sorry. I lost a few zeros there. And then we'll bring individual projects to the board for review and approval as they become submitted to our department. Other than that, I'd be more than happy to answer questions about the program, and after that, I requested the board hold a public hearing.
Okay, any questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. I'll open the public hearing and ask if anyone would like to testify on this matter. Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and entertain a motion.
I move we approve the proposed Section 108 loan pool application to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development.
Second.
Been moved and second that we approve the proposed Section 108 loan pool application to U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. The next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. I ask the clerk to read the consent agenda by title.
Okay, today's consent agenda. Under Health, Housing, and Human Services, approval of an intergovernmental agreement with Oregon State University for the Public Health Comprehensive Evaluation Plan, approval of a renewal intergovernmental agreement with Washington County for the city's Readiness Initiative program, approval of a professional, technical, and consultant services contract with Columbia Care Services for supported housing services, approval of an intergovernmental subrecipient agreement number 3 with the City of Sandy Senior and Community Center to provide social services for Clackamas County residents age 60 and over, approval of an intergovernmental agreement with the Oregon Department of Transportation Rail and Public Transit Division, grant award number 5339 for Mount Hood Express vehicle purchase of 2 buses, and approval of intergovernmental agreement with the Oregon Department of Transportation Rail and Public Transit Division, grant award number 5311 for Mount Hood Express vehicle purchases. These 4 items have been removed for further staff review from the consent agenda. And under the Department of Transportation and Development, approval to apply to the Oregon Department of Transportation for all road transportation safety program funding for federal fiscal years 2022 and 2024. Authorization to purchase 21 snow plows from Pepe Machinery for the Department of Transportation and Development. Approval of the contract with Pacific Landscape Services for landscape maintenance for DTD. Under elected officials, approval of previous business meeting minutes. And a request by the Clackamas County Sheriff's Office to enter into an intergovernmental agreement with Clackamas Community College for fiscal year 2018-2019 GED classes for Clackamas County Jail. Under Community Corrections, approval of an intergovernmental agreement with Oregon Metro to provide work crew services for fiscal year 2018-2019. Approval of intergovernmental agreements with the cities of Happy Valley, Milwaukee, Molalla, Oregon City, and Wilsonville to provide work crew services for fiscal year 2018-2019. Approval of an intergovernmental agreement with Clackamas Community College to provide work crew services for fiscal year 2018-2019. Approval of an intergovernmental agreement with Business and Community Services for the Fairgrounds to provide work crew services for fiscal year 2018-2019. Under the Finance Department, approval of a resolution for a Clackamas County supplemental budget less than 10% for fiscal year 2017-2018. Under the Juvenile Department, approval of Amendment Number 6 to the intergovernmental agreement with Multnomah County for assessment and evaluation beds. Under Water Environment Services, approval of amendment to easement 43139EA with the Oregon Department of State Lands for the Kellogg Creek Water Resource Recovery Facility, and approval of amendment number 1 to the intergovernmental agreement between the City of Milwaukee and Water Environment Services for bridge construction. That concludes today's consent agenda.
I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended.
I move to approve the consent agenda as amended.
Second.
Been moved and second that we approve the consent agenda as amended. Any further discussion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I just have a question on the Department of Transportation and Development, item number 2, the purchase of 21 snow plows. Not that I'm objecting to purchasing the plows, but why 21 in one crack?
It's an attachment. that they put on the
It
plow.
is the attachment and the plows that we currently have, they're all
it's an
kind of
attachment
reaching
to the plow.
extent of their useful life. So, and we purchased this through a state contract, so.
But I was thinking with 21 snowplows all at one time, I'm going, why couldn't we do a couple a year every year and not have to, but now I got it. Thank you.
Yeah, it was quite the winter, I think, so.
Not a problem. Thank you.
Did we vote?
No.
Oh, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. So Don, instead of doing what I said earlier, I thought that maybe you might, during your update, use this time to talk about the Happy Valley North Clackamas Parks issue.
Certainly, I can do that, yes.
Before you do that, I want to say something. One of the comments on Facebook was that I called the governor and convinced her to bring this issue about the Parks District forward. I actually called the governor after the DOR and the Department of Justice mentioned that Happy Valley had done the process wrong. And I asked the governor to give us some flexibility to working with Happy Valley. We have tried to resolve this issue together, and we looked like we were going in the right direction until the disposition of assets was brought into the discussion, at which time we, in a number of different formats, attempted to provide some opportunity to discuss the disposition of assets, but were not met with, I would say, an effort to work together. So Don, I'd appreciate it if you could kind of update folks on the issue. Want to add one other thing. When the phone call came in from the Department of Revenue, I didn't think that was the conversation we were going to have. But they started out in the conversation, and it wasn't just me. It was Happy Valley City Council members, the mayor, the city administrator, assistant city administrator, and their lawyer, myself, Don, our lawyer, and immediately they said they've come to a decision. And I thought we were going to have an opportunity to talk about how we could work with Happy Valley, but the decision was made. It was not my request. So I just wanted to make sure that was clear, because there was a Facebook post that suggested that I talked the governor into doing something that wasn't done. And by the way, I only called because we heard that, we had legislators calling, telling us that Happy Valley would like us to do this or that. And we were concerned that they were going around the law. And the law is pretty specific, even though it's pretty gray in some areas, because this has never happened before. A divorce from a district never happened before. So we were all confused. We were not the lawyers for Happy Valley. We did not provide advice. We did provide recommendations, which they did not take. Don.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just for folks who listen in on the program and attend the meeting, it's helpful to be able to share that on Tuesday of this week, Clackamas County was formally notified that the Oregon Department of Revenue, or otherwise known as the DOR, had rescinded what was a previous approval made in March of this year to approve a boundary change for the city of Happy Valley to withdraw from the jurisdiction of the North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District. The decision, which is provided in writing, we have copies available to anybody who's interested in obtaining a copy, determined that the Happy Valley City Council did not have the substantive authority to withdraw from the Parks District. And as a result, the boundary change process is not complete, and Happy Valley remains a part of the North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District going forward. The ruling, of course, came as a unintended and unexpected response to a procedural question that was asked of the Department of Revenue by the Clackamas County assessor related to the procedures required to implement the withdrawal. And of course, the Clackamas County assessor is an independently elected office holder. It's important to note that the county and the county commissioners have never objected to the city's withdrawal from the Parks District. We did have some concerns about the process for withdrawal, and we shared those, and we've had, as Chair Bernard stated, had some ongoing discussions and differences related to the disposition of assets between the district and the city under the assumptions that the withdrawal was proceeding. And so now these concerns have really come to pass, and in some respects, the county has been afforded some measure of blame for this situation, but I just wanted to make sure it's clear that the responsibility and consequences for the decision to withdraw from NCPRD really lies with the entirely with the action of the City of Happy Valley. Our focus is and has always been on protecting the interests of all of the residents who live and own property within the North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District. And there's some 120,000 citizens who live within the district, of which the City of Happy Valley represents about 19,000. So even as the issue of withdrawal proceeds, we have over 100,000 citizens who will remain in the district from the cities of City of Milwaukee and the communities of Oak Grove and Jennings Lodge and Clackamas, all of whom are counting on the district to continue to be able to provide quality parks and recreation services. So whatever it is we do and whatever solutions we're able to work with directly in our discussions with the City of Happy Valley, we have got to make sure is fair to everyone, fair to the citizens of the City of Happy Valley who are also our citizens in the county and citizens now of the Parks District, as well as fair and equitable to all of those other citizens in the remainder of the district. So, and having said that, I want to make sure, and I think this is reflective of the perspective of the Board of County Commissioners here, is that we are willing and have been willing to continue to work with the City of Happy Valley to find a reasonable and responsible solution that serves the residents of the district and the citizens of Happy Valley, and we continue to look forward to being able to do that. So that's my statement with regard to that. I do have some other things I wanted to quickly share with you, just kind of good news stories. We continue, and I'm always pleased when I get these, we continue to get compliments regarding our Transportation and Development Department staff. We received the following note via our Contact the County form, which is available in a footer on our website, www.clackamas.us. And the note says, I want to provide feedback on the experience I had with county employees. As a homeowner building a large garage, I was expecting this process to be difficult. This was influenced by what I'd heard from other people building in a different county. I want to thank everyone I dealt with at the reception desk, on the phone, and in the planning, permitting, and inspection processes. Everyone was kind, courteous, and helpful. Great job, Clackamas County, A+. So I just wanted to share that, and again, extend my thanks and appreciation to our outstanding staff in Transportation and Development. Then I also wanted to share with you that our Water Environment Services Department's Watershed Health Education Program, which we do in partnership with other community organizations, finished up this year's academic year's field trips by giving Clackamas area fourth graders a hands-on learning opportunity. Students were involved and worked with removing invasive English ivy. And then they boarded canoes to explore the wildlife behind Goat Island and the Willamette River. They saw baby herons, ducklings, and bald eagles while observing as well the signs of human impacts on the watershed. And it was a great event. I want to thank our West staff for their leadership in making that available to these young people. Then finally, this is something to smile about, I guess is the way to introduce this. Our health centers had the opportunity to help out a Sandy High School student who apparently had been drinking soda for very excessively for a number of years, and the student, this young person, had a mouth full of cavities and decay and a long list of dental providers who really couldn't help him. But this young person had an opportunity to meet with our dental director for our health centers, Justin Gonzalez. And Dr. Gonzalez stepped in. He provided the teen with a plan not just to improve his smile, but also his overall health. And our health centers worked with our community health council to provide support. And just 2 weeks ago, the work was completed. The teen has a really new, amazing smile. And I don't know if you know just how important this is to people, but a good smile, a healthy smile, can be a life-changing experience, and certainly has been for this young teen, and helped to promote a more brighter outlook on life for this individual. And this is another highlight of one of the many things that the folks here at Clackamas County do for the citizens here in our communities. Wanted to share that. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Savas.
Yeah, well, actually, want to follow up a little bit on the Happy Valley thing for people out there that may not. I think Don did a great job covering, and the chair did as well. But there's a couple things that maybe ought to be highlighted a little bit, and a little bit of backdrop here is that the city did request to withdraw over a year ago, and they've been going through a process. And I believe in March, the Department of Revenue, which is a state agency, not a county agency, a state agency, approved their request. So rightfully, the city of Happy Valley felt that they were going down the right path, and they proceeded and put it on the ballot, in the May ballot. The voters approved the withdrawal process by 70-some-odd%. And then we just learned recently through that, in the process of that, they discovered, the Department of Revenue, state agency, discovered that that process was not the correct process. And it cites two different statutes of withdrawal, both of which we actually referenced in communications with them in different aspects of that. But all to say, really, you know, if the Department of Revenue did not change their mind, and this was also confirmed by the Department of Justice, another state agency, I guess they were consulted to make sure that the Department of Revenue's rescinding of this was correct. So this is a big deal, and we're not, this puts us all in a very awkward position, but I just wanted to point that out, that one big thing. I think some people thought the Department of Revenue was in the county. It's not in the county. It's actually in the state, at the state level. Last week, we spoke a little bit. We had an introduction by Health and Human Services on our health score, and I remember Chair Bernard asking the question why we ranked 36 out of 36 counties for environment. I was, it went 39 as well, but technically it was 36, but I think it was an error. So I dug a little bit deeper and got the actual information that actually supported that, the resource, and discovered that the reason we did, several factors are in there, housing, so forth, but the major reason was our commute times back and forth to work were the highest in the state. And that's what really threw us over the edge. And between that and some other factors, it was actually the transportation aspect of, again, we are a bedroom community, the jobs, people commute out, and we have a long travel time, and that's not a great environment. It's also an environment for stress and a number of things, other factors factor into that other than what might be air quality as well. So I just wanted to give a little bit of a update on that. This week, excuse me, Chair, and I chatted with the chair previously before the meeting started about this, but we had a meeting yesterday on value pricing, the tolling aspect, and my goal yesterday and during this session was to at least establish some guiding principles, because knowing the people around the table on this tolling committee, our last meeting's on Monday, you know, we just got the packet, and this morning in Portland at Metro at the JPAC meeting, I spoke to two significant members on the committee, and they are not comfortable with the questions that were proposed by ODOT, and they even went so far as to do what I tried to do late yesterday afternoon, was rewrite the question, and even then, I think we realized that that might be so complicated because everyone's writing the questions differently, rewriting the questions, that I think we're going to fall back to, there was some agreement this morning that we ought to just fall back to the basic principles of what we want to see or not see. And I think I think I've heard all of those yesterday, and I think I captured them. And we'll be presenting those, but I don't think we're going to get very far in the questions because no one's in agreement that the question was worded right in the first place, several questions. So as opposed to everyone saying no, 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 I think we want to go back to perhaps what might just be an agreement on what the guiding principles are, and we'll see what happens. Other than that, any other conversation, I would certainly entertain it here, but I don't know what else to do with that. I do want to say that one of the factors that we didn't get to yesterday was attachment 4 and 5. 4 particularly was the public input, which is a significant amount of paperwork. And what, you know, and particularly what those in Clackamas County have voiced about diversion and the issues. And I also spent the week, couple of days, I don't have all of them, I did read through some of the traffic accident reports on Stafford Road, for example. And I asked the Sheriff's Department, give us all the traffic accident reports on Stafford Road. And for those of you who know, that really starts in the southern part of Wilsonville, and it goes all the way up into Lake Oswego. It's on both sides of I-205. So what I've read so far, out of a stack about that thick, most of the accidents are on the south side of 205, not on the Borland-Stafford area, but actually between Wilsonville and the 205 freeway. Most of those accidents are rollovers. Those aren't, we're not talking little fender benders, and so a rollover is pretty serious, but I thought I would read one excerpt out of one of the police reports, because this is a sheriff interviewing a rollover victim in the hospital the day of the accident. And I won't for her sake, I won't mention her name. I contacted her in the emergency room located at Meridian Park Hospital and learned the following, and this is her quote. She told me that she was driving to the airport, and due to the high volume of traffic, she took a shortcut and had planned to use Southwest Stafford Road to access I-205. We kind of know that, that's happening a lot anecdotally, but this is one report that actually, you know, put it in words that people are using that. And I think that is the seriousness of a rollover accident. I don't know if anyone's ever been in a rollover accident, but it's bad. I've been in one myself. It's not good, and sometimes people don't really survive those often. So I will say that as a person, and I spoke of this before when we had some Wilsonville folks here, and we discussed it yesterday morning with others at the C4 Metro Subcommittee meeting. You know, public safety is a primary responsibility of the county on its roads, of course. And so the diversion aspects in a lot of these stories and a lot of these concerns and a lot of the roads in Clackamas County that are being used as, quote, the third lane of I-205 are significant, quite a few and quite a bit of traffic. And the other one is alternatives. The principle of value pricing is to encourage people to take an alternative. And there are places along I-5 and I-205 where those alternatives exist. There are places where they don't exist, and I think that's really an unfair predicament for drivers who want to get from point A to point B. And that 14-mile stretch of where the only stretch of I-205 that has no alternatives is in Clackamas County, and it's between Wilsonville and the town center. So I'm going to, absent any comments today, I'm going to stick with the principles I kind of heard and we've had, and express those at the meeting on Monday.
Okay. Next up is Commissioner Humbertson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Looping back a little bit on the dental health question or issue that our administrator brought up. Just a factoid, but in the 1850s, one of the two top reasons that people died early was dental health. And the fact that we do a prophylactic approach to dental health in today's day and age has saved a lot of people's lives. So what they're doing at the clinic is commendable. With respect to the Happy Valley issue, I'll simply say that I think Happy Valley, in good faith, tried to withdraw under certain codes. We went along with that. So did the Department of Revenue. And frankly, we all kind of own a piece of this because nobody actually went back and actually looked at what code sections we should have been following in advance. Had we done that, we might not be sitting here. So we all kind of own a piece of this, and hopefully we'll be able to fix it. All of that being said, I'll move on to, that was the week that was. Had our Fair Board meeting this week, and the Fair Board is continuing to move forward on their business plan and their master plan. They're hoping to have the master plan completed after the fair. I got the impression that they're a little impatient. They want to get it done faster, so they are definitely pushing it. As we all know, most of us attended the Pride Parade this year in Portland, which was, once again, one of the more interesting events that one can go to say the least. Several of us also attended the community leaders meeting this week. My wife and I had the opportunity to join the Oregon City Women's Club for a fundraiser the other evening at Abby's Pizza. And Chair Bernard and I attended the Charbonneau Community Forum, where a variety of issues, including transportation and others, were discussed with the community. That being said, the next item I have is the dog. And before I talk about this one, I have to tell you that about a week or so ago, in fact, exactly a week ago, my wife and I adopted a dog from the shelter. It's a little bit of a process, but it's amazing what they do. The dog is neutered, the dog has a chip, the dog gets all its shots, it has a complete health check, and then they give you toys and food and a bed and all kinds of goodies for the dog. So it was quite an experience, and I would encourage people, if they're looking for a pet, that please go to the shelter and get a pet there. And so here we go. This is Sparrow. He is a Siberian Husky, Alaskan Husky mix. He will need lots of exercise and a job to do to keep his mind and body healthy. He can catch a treat in midair. His eyes are a unique and mesmerizing ice white color. His beautiful coat sheds heavily twice a year, and daily brushing will help keep it under control. Find out for yourself how fabulous he is when you come to visit. He hopes it is soon. For more information about Sparrow and other adoptable dogs, please contact Clackamas County Dog Services at 503-655-8628 or www.clackamas.us/dogs. And by the way, they are right when it comes to Huskies. They do need lots of exercise.
Commissioner Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to highlight one very special event that happened this week. Was an event at our county, Barton Park. We installed an electric charging station for mobility devices. And this was an effort that is pretty inspiring. Darren Umbarger, who is from Pendleton, who I've actually known for many years with my service on the Disability Rights Oregon Board, innovated these charging stations. And if any of you know anything about mobility devices, it takes all night to charge your wheelchair, typically. But with these charging stations, they can be charged in 20 minutes. So if you can imagine, somebody who utilizes a mobility device can't go certain places, or they can be stuck in certain places if their mobility device charger fails. So getting these installed, this has been amazing. There was a mobility charging station installed in our state capitol recently. These charging stations are now being requested across this nation. They are going in. Our first charging station is at Barton Park, and what was so great was when we were all there, and you can see these pictures here up on the screen. There were many people at this event. You can't see all the people, but you can see a few of them. And you're looking out, and you see at the bottom, you see the trees that are there, and how peaceful and beautiful our Barton Park is. And we all know that we not only can picnic at Barton Park, but we can camp there, we can have family time, community time. People on a mobility device can't experience the full range of activities if they are not able to recharge. So this is a moment to celebrate. It was pretty inspiring. Mike Foley, who's pictured there at the bottom, who has sight limitations, you see him there with the white cane. He is who brought it to my attention, and I want to give a special thanks to Emmett and to Brenda Howitt for working behind the scenes to facilitate this, and Rick Grun, our forester, and working with us, just really took the lead on making sure that this could happen for our Clackamas County. And on the bottom picture in the middle is Darren Umbarger demonstrating how simple it is to charge the wheelchair. You basically take the cord and put it in. It goes right in. It's high up. If you notice at the bottom, the charging station is at a level that is high. When the outlet is low, people that use a mobility device can't reach it. So having it higher is absolutely essential, very simple, and it was just an honor to be there. I do want to let you know that Congressman Schrader wrote some special words here, and I just want to read just a paragraph of it because he does such a good job describing this. He says, "Today's event is a reflection of innovation, collaboration, and dedication to removing barriers and supporting access for all. Several people have been involved in this project, but I would like to first acknowledge the remarkable efforts of Darren Umbarger, who was inspired to invent these charging stations and is the reason everyone is gathered here today. Thanks to his vision, users of wheelchairs and scooters are not limited in their experiences by the charge life of a battery. With the numerous orders pouring in for stations from a variety of establishments within Oregon and beyond, it is a clear indication that this is an answer to the widespread need. Whether facilitating a fun day at the park with a family or ensuring access to vital services at a medical or governmental facility, I appreciate the work of Darren and Clearview Disability Resources Center to furthering this movement. I also want to acknowledge the Clackamas County Parks Board and Rick Grun, Parks and Forest Manager, for committing to investing in the progressive efforts, and further extend the gratitude to Clackamas County Commissioner Sonia Fisher for her help to ensure its success. Please accept my wishes for a wonderful event, and congratulations on the significant milestone. Sincerely, Kurt Schrader, Member of Congress."
So he invented this item?
Yes, Darren Umbarger from Pendleton, Clearview Disability, and it is going gangbusters. So we are part of that.
For the order for around here, for the orders are 10 years out.
Yeah, well, we're working with facilities as well to look at doing this with our public facility, but our first effort was at Barton Park, so good news.
Is that it?
Yep.
Great. So I guess it's up to me now. So I just want to, oh, did I do you?
No, it's okay.
Oh, sorry, Martha. I took my eye off the list. Commissioner Schrader.
Okay, well, a number of things. I was not able to go to the Pride Parade, but I did go in Saturday with a lot of our staff folks and helped set up the booth, watched it go up, stayed there for about a couple of hours, and again, I heard it was, as Commissioner Humbert said, it's always a colorful event, but I was glad to participate in a different way this year, not being in the parade. A couple of things. I attended our Workforce Council meeting this morning, and the good news is it's a great Workforce Council. The bad news is that WIOA funds, Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act funds, have been cut a 10% cut from the current year allocations. There was an 11% cut to youth, a 10.7 cut to adult, and 14% cut to dislocated worker funds. So there's been an overall decrease in the federal funding to 12.2%. And I'm glad you mentioned Congressman Schrader, because I have spoken to him more than one occasion, is that this is a key piece of what we do here in the county. If we're talking about jobs, and we're talking about making sure that dislocated workers get what they need, that youth get into careers, that our business community gets the pipeline they need, that this is still an essential component for funding at the federal level. And generally, these funds are funneled through the state, and the state actually has done a good job. They've also taken their cuts. They've tried to funnel as much of the money directly to the workforce boards in the state rather than take them for administrative costs. I will say at the National Association of Counties, I was on a call with them just the other day for our Community and Economic Development Committee, and we are actually have a resolution that is going to ask Congress to up the ante, continue the workforce innovation funds, and potentially fund that to a higher level, as well as community development block grants. And we are also co-sponsoring, I'm co-sponsoring a resolution with other members of our delegation here in the counties to basically make sure that voucher funding for our veterans remains intact. It's been zeroed out in the Trump administration's budget, and the National Association, on behalf of all of our 36 counties here, and in particular our county here, is working hard to really make sure these funding streams don't dry up. Because remember, we're the boots on the ground. The money, the manna falls from heaven, but we are the worker bees that really are the service delivery providers for this, for all of these kinds of things. I also attended the Metro Regional Solutions Advisory Committee. The Oregon City 213 project is still one of the top 3 projects that the final decision will be made by the state, by the governor's office in the next few weeks about which project kind of rises to the top for those dollars. And let's see. Another thing I noticed at the workforce partnership today that I wanted to mention was that I was able to talk to them and give them some data about how our county is doing, and basically our employment level is the lowest it's been since 2012. I think it's about 4.6%. I'd have to check my numbers. I don't have them in front of me. But that's good news. And the other thing I found out, that from their perspective, from what the county can do, they really see a serious need for children for child care. And not only child care during the day, but evening and nighttime child care, because a lot of, which I thought was interesting, I'd never really thought of that before. But there are a lot of people that could or should be doing, would do shift work, but they don't have the child care during the evening hours to make that happen. So I just thought I'd throw that out there, and maybe it's a policy issue we can be looking at as a commission to help our workforce board out. All right, let's go to the word of the week. Wow, that was interesting. Okay, there we go. Pristine, unspoiled, primitive. Do you know something that is pristine is original and uncorrupted by later influence? Beth always made sure that the library was in pristine condition for when the children and adults arrived to learn. Okay, arts and culture activities in the county. This week, Milwaukee Center's weekly live jazz and dancing. Every Friday at noon, the John Munger Memorial Jazz Band plays at the Milwaukee Center, allowing dancers of all ages and skill levels to take a spin around the dance floor to lively big band standards. The band, which has been performing at the Milwaukee Center for well over 2 decades, always plays the nostalgic Till We Meet Again as their signature last piece. Whether you're a seasoned dancer or want to practice new moves learned from our tango and East Coast swing classes, you can grab your dancing shoes and join us for these free performances. That is Friday, June 22nd noon at the Milwaukee Center. One of these days when I'm retired, I'll have to do that. Okay, Abernathy Performing Arts presents The Goblin Market. Based on a narrative poem by Christina Rossetti, the original story, choreography, and score will take you through a forest full of danger and excitement. Join in this tale of two sisters taken on magical journey to fight for love and loyalty. Also, it's not up here on the screen, but the Lakewood Center for the Arts, they have their big weekend this weekend, and so you can go to George Rogers Park in Lake Oswego Saturday and Sunday, and there will be all kinds of artists, exhibits. There'll be music, there'll be dancing, and I think there's even a beer garden there, so if you want to do that. And Chess, their play is going to be opening up, I believe, this next week. So, and is Kirk up to anything different now that we need to know about?
Kirk spends his summer working with our Clackamas County youth for the Youth Theater for Change program, and that's what his summer will entail.
Okay, great, thanks. All right.
Everyone covered now?
You're all covered.
All right.
Your turn.
So, back to the Happy Valley situation. I served on the Parks District Board, I believe, before I was mayor of Milwaukee, so prior to 2001. And we had a plan which, at the time, what year did Happy Valley join the district? I see 2015?
6.
No, 2006.
Okay.
It was when I was here.
So while I was the mayor, I continued to serve on that district, and there was a plan to build parks. We now have 78 acres of parks in Happy Valley, but there is still a plan. In that plan is a community center. That plan, you don't just do things all of a sudden. The plan requires planning, and Happy Valley has grown, and that plan is still in the plan. So when it's said that we didn't fulfill our promises, I think that's disingenuous. I mean, it's still in the plan until that changes. We have been working Happy Valley on the advisory committee, along with Paul's been the liaison, working with Happy Valley to move that plan forward. So since it was suggested that we didn't fulfill that promise, there's still an agreement to fulfill that promise. Finally, I also thought it was always a little strange that a group, let's take example that Milwaukee decides they want to withdraw from the district, but the citizens voted it in. To suggest that the city council could withdraw without a vote, people seemed rather odd to me. And when the city council of Happy Valley did withdraw from the district by a vote of the city council and not the vote of the citizens, I did think that was kind of odd. Because it would require a vote of the people, as you would normally think. I can't for right now think of a issue that Clackamas County might have like that. You could say Metro. Let's say one day we decided to withdraw from Metro, and so the Clackamas County Board says, well, we're going to withdraw from the Metro. Is there a motion? And we withdraw. Now, that couldn't happen, actually. It would require a vote of the people to withdraw from Metro, and probably the vote of the entire Metro area, or those people in Metro, to allow us to withdraw from the district, or the Metro council. I don't think we could possibly do that on our own. So I did think that was odd at the time. We also, Commissioner Fisher had a little lunchtime discussion about the Me Too movement, and there were some great questions that we all pondered and talked about. I thought you did a great job, and we should do more of those things. Of course, you do it too much, and pretty soon nobody will show up. But I really thought you did a good job. I went. I was proud of you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And all of us have issues that we could probably do. I thought it was exciting, and there were some hard questions. I heard somebody one time said that they won the lottery because they're a white male. When you think about it, that's true. We do have a lot of advantages. Also, we recently saw a report on the suicide rates among youth and senior citizens. It shocked me to see the number of suicides from kids 8 to 14. I again think that it's really important, even if you don't notice anything, to ask. Matter of fact, I'm wearing a button that says, ask the question, are you thinking about suicide? And if the answer is yes, the next question is, do you have a plan? But it's important that we ask, because the rate is climbing, and there are resources to help address this problem, and we live in a stressful world, and it would a lot of people are affected by stress differently than the way we are. So you got to consider that, and ask your children, you know, who might be being bullied or something at school and haven't told you. Ask the question: are you contemplating suicide? If you are, do you have a plan? And offer to help, because again, it's very important that we protect our youth and our senior citizens from this. I know 2 people who no one ever imagined that they would commit suicide, who walked out in the forest and shot themselves, and thinking that they were doing a good thing for the family. Well, it didn't turn out so good. The family was left with no idea why, and with the lack of resources to continue on in the lifestyle they had been raised in. Also know some of you died in a rollover on Stafford Road. A good friend in the 80s who went off the edge and flipped the car over. I didn't know the rollovers were that big. I'm always shocked when I see a rollover. How the heck did they do that? But they do. So drive carefully and have a good weekend, and thank you for watching today's board meeting. With that, we're adjourned.